The crimson wine spread across Brielle's white uniform like blood on snow. She stood frozen in the center of the opulent dining room, every eye turned toward her, every conversation silenced. Julian Valentino's sister, Gianna, held the empty glass with a satisfied smirk, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light as she lowered her hand. "Oh, how clumsy of me," Gianna said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I suppose that's what happens when the help doesn't know their place." Brielle's hands trembled at her sides. She could feel the cold liquid seeping through the fabric, could hear the muffled laughter from the other guests, powerful men and women who saw her as nothing more than part of the furniture. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She needed this job. Her grandmother's medication cost more than Brielle made in a month, and this exclusive catering position at the Valentino estate was the only thing keeping them afloat. She opened her mouth to apologize. For what, she didn't know when the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Gianna. The single word cut through the air like a blade. Julian Valentino stood in the doorway, and the silence that followed was absolute. If you want to discover how this moment changed everything, how a single act of humiliation led to the most dangerous love story, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every view helps bring more stories like this one to life. Brielle had been working the Valentino estate event for 3 hours, and her feet ached in the cheap shoes she'd bought at a discount store. She moved through the crowd of wealthy guests like a ghost, refilling champagne glasses and clearing plates, making herself as invisible as possible. That was the key to survival in this world. Be useful but unseen. The Valentino mansion was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. Crystal chandeliers worth more than her apartment building hung from vaulted ceilings. Original artwork decorated walls that stretched endlessly. Even the air smelled expensive, a mixture of imported flowers and cologne that probably cost more per ounce than her hourly wage. She'd taken this job through a catering company desperate for staff. The pay was triple her usual rate, enough to cover her grandmother's heart medication for 2 months, enough to maybe fix the leak in their apartment ceiling, enough to matter. "More wine here," a sharp voice called out. Brielle turned to see a woman in a designer dress that probably cost more than Brielle's annual salary. The woman didn't look at her, just held out her empty glass expectantly. Brielle recognized her from the photographs displayed throughout the mansion, Gianna Valentino, the boss's younger sister. "Of course, ma'am," Brielle said quietly, approaching with the wine bottle. As she poured, Gianna turned suddenly and Brielle's hand jerked. A single drop of red wine landed on the white tablecloth. "Are you incompetent?" Gianna's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby guests. "Do you have any idea how much this linen's cost?" "I'm so sorry, Brielle started. "Sorry doesn't clean expensive fabric." Gianna stood, and something in her eyes made Brielle's stomach drop. "You people always make such messes." The emphasis on "you people" wasn't lost on anyone in the vicinity. Brielle felt her face grow hot, felt the familiar sting of humiliation and anger mixing in her chest. But she swallowed it down. She needed this job. She needed the money. "Let me get something to clean it," Brielle said, keeping her voice steady. "Oh, don't bother." Gianna reached for her wine glass, and Brielle saw it coming a split second before it happened. Saw the deliberate tilt of the wrist, the calculated movement. The wine hit Brielle's chest, soaking through her uniform, cold and shocking. Gasps echoed around them. Someone laughed. Brielle stood there, feeling the liquid drip down to her shoes, feeling every eye on her, feeling smaller than she'd ever felt in her life. "Now we're even," Gianna said with a smile. Brielle's vision blurred. Not with tears, she wouldn't give them that satisfaction, but with rage she couldn't express. She opened her mouth, not sure what would come out, when the air in the room changed. "Gianna!" The voice came from behind her, deep and cold. Every conversation stopped. Every movement froze. Brielle turned slowly and found herself looking at a man who commanded attention simply by existing. Julian Valentino was taller than she'd expected, dressed in a black suit that fit him like it had been painted on. His dark hair was styled perfectly, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass. But it was his eyes that held her. Dark, intense, and currently fixed on his sister with an expression that made several guests step backward. "Julian, I was just—" Gianna started. "Leave." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "But the party, now." Gianna's face flushed red. She opened her mouth to protest, then seemed to think better of it. She grabbed her clutch and stormed toward the exit, her heels clicking angrily against the marble floor. Julian's gaze swept the room. Anyone else who finds entertainment in humiliating my staff can join her. The silence was deafening. Then slowly, conversations resumed, though in much quieter tones. Julian turned to Brielle, and she felt her breath catch. Up close he was even more intimidating and more devastatingly handsome than any man had a right to be. "Come with me," he said. It wasn't a request. Brielle followed him through a side door, down a hallway lined with more expensive art, and into what appeared to be a private study. He closed the door behind them, and she suddenly became acutely aware that she was alone with the most dangerous man in the city. Julian Valentino's reputation preceded him. Everyone knew who he was, the young boss who'd taken over his father's empire and expanded it into something even more powerful and feared. People whispered that he'd eliminated 3 rival families in his first year, that he'd never lost a negotiation, that he was ruthless, brilliant, and absolutely merciless. He moved to a cabinet and pulled out a black garment bag. "There's a bathroom through there," he said, gesturing to another door. "Change into this. Your uniform will be cleaned and returned." Brielle looked at the bag, then at him. "That's not necessary, Mr. Valentino. I can—" It wasn't a suggestion. His tone remained neutral, but something in it made her take the bag. "And when you're finished, come back here. We need to talk." She wanted to ask what about, wanted to refuse and just leave this humiliating night behind her. But the way he looked at her, not with pity or disgust, but with an intensity she couldn't quite name, kept her rooted to the spot. "Yes, sir," she heard herself say. In the bathroom, she found herself in a space larger than her entire bedroom. Marble counters, gold fixtures, and a mirror that showed her exactly how pathetic she looked, wine-stained, mascara slightly smudged, hair escaping its neat bun. She unzipped the garment bag and froze. Inside was a designer dress, black and elegant, with a price tag she didn't dare look at. He wanted her to wear this? A dress that cost more than she made in 6 months. But she couldn't go back out in the wine-soaked uniform. She carefully removed her clothes, washed the wine from her skin, and slipped into the dress. It fit perfectly, hugging her curves in a way that made her look like she belonged in this world of wealth and power. When she returned to the study, Julian was sitting behind a massive desk, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His eyes tracked her movement across the room, and she saw something flicker in their depths. "Better," he said simply. "Sit." She sat in the chair across from him, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Every instinct told her to be careful, to guard her words. "What's your name?" he asked. "Brielle Montgomery, sir." "How long have you been working for the catering company?" 6 months. He nodded slowly, studying her. "You handled that situation with remarkable composure." She wasn't sure what to say to that, so she said nothing. "My sister can be." He paused, choosing his word carefully. "Difficult. Her behavior tonight was unacceptable. You have my apology." Brielle blinked. The most powerful crime boss in the city was apologizing to her? "It's fine," she said automatically. "No," he said, his voice hardening slightly. "It's not. No one in my home should be treated that way." He leaned forward, his gaze pinning her in place. "I'm going to make this right." "Really, Mr. Valentino, it's not—" "How much do you make per event?" The question caught her off guard. Excuse me?" "Your rate. How much does the catering company pay you?" she told him, feeling embarrassed by how small the number sounded in this opulent office. His jaw tightened. "And they're charging me 10 times that amount per server." He pulled out his phone, made a quick call. "Marco, contact Elite Events. Tell them their services are no longer needed. Ever." He hung up without waiting for a response, then turned back to Brielle. "You're hired." "I'm what?" "I need someone to coordinate events at the estate. Someone who clearly knows how to handle pressure and maintain dignity in difficult situations." His eyes held hers. "The pay is $15,000 a month plus benefits and accommodations if you need them." Brielle's mind reeled. $15,000. That was more than she made in half a year. "Mr. Valentino, I'm just a server. I don't have experience coordinating. You'll learn, and you'll be paid while you do. He stood, and she automatically stood with him. Do we have an agreement? She should say no. She should walk away from this dangerous world and this dangerous man, but she thought of her grandmother, of the medication they couldn't always afford, of the leaky ceiling and the overdue bills. Yes, she heard herself say. We have an agreement. Something that might have been satisfaction crossed his face. Good. You start Monday. Marco will handle the details. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Brielle? Yes, sir. That dress looks much better on you than your uniform did. Keep it. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her standing in his study, wearing a dress worth more than her car, with a job offer that would change everything. She didn't know it yet, but that moment, standing in Julian Valentino's office, agreeing to work for him, was the moment her entire life shifted onto a new path, one that would lead to danger, devotion, and a love that would consume them both. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Brielle stood outside the Valentino estate at 7 a.m., her stomach in knots. She'd spent the entire weekend second-guessing her decision. But the envelope of cash that had been delivered to her apartment Saturday afternoon, advance payment, the note had said, made turning back impossible. She'd already used half of it to pay 2 months of her grandmother's medication in advance. The massive iron gates swung open as she approached, and a man in a dark suit gestured for her to follow him. I'm Marco Santini, Mr. Valentino's head of security. I'll be showing you around. The estate looked different in daylight, less intimidating, more beautiful. Gardens stretched in every direction, meticulously maintained. The mansion itself was a work of art, Italian architecture mixed with modern luxury. Mr. Valentino is in a meeting until 9, Marco said as they walked. Your office is here. He opened a door to reveal a space that made Brielle's breath catch. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens. A sleek desk held state-of-the-art equipment, and a bookshelf was already stocked with event planning resources. This is mine, she asked. Marco almost smiled. Mr. Valentino doesn't do anything halfway. There's a computer, phone, everything you'll need. Mrs. Chen will brief you on the upcoming event schedule. He checked his watch. She'll be here in 10 minutes. Coffee? I can get it myself. The kitchen is 3 hallways over. I'll bring it. He left before she could protest. Brielle sank into the expensive office chair and tried to process everything. 3 days ago she'd been serving drinks at this estate. Now she had an office here. Now she worked for a man whose name made people nervous. Mrs. Chen turned out to be an efficient woman in her 60s who ran through the schedule with military precision. Mr. Valentino hosts events twice a month, business dinners, charity galas, family gatherings. Your job is to coordinate everything. Catering, staff, decorations, guest lists. I'll help you for the first month. Then you're on your own. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of information. Brielle took notes frantically, trying to absorb names, protocols, vendor contacts. Her head was spinning when Mrs. Chen finally left. Overwhelming, isn't it? The voice from the doorway made her jump. Julian Valentino stood there in another perfectly tailored suit, this one charcoal grey. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine, powerful, polished, untouchable. Mr. Valentino, she stood quickly. I didn't hear you come in. That's the point. He stepped into her office, and suddenly the spacious room felt much smaller. How's your first morning? Educational, she said carefully. Mrs. Chen can be intense, but she's the best. He moved to the window, looking out at the gardens. I want you to know, Brielle, that you're not just here to coordinate parties. Her heart rate picked up. What do you mean? He turned to face her, and the intensity in his dark eyes made her breath catch. My sister's behavior the other night wasn't an isolated incident. She believes certain people are beneath her, and she uses events like that party to remind them of it. I won't tolerate that mentality in my home. So Brielle struggled to understand. What exactly am I? A statement. He moved closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne, expensive and dangerously appealing. You're talented, capable, and you deserve respect. I'm putting you in a position of authority to make that clear. She should have felt grateful. Instead, she felt confused. Why do you care? You don't even know me. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, that she'd spoken so directly. "Maybe I want to." The words hung in the air between them. Brielle's pulse raced. This was her boss, the most dangerous man in the city. She should step back, maintain professional distance, but she didn't move. "Mr. Valentino—" "Julian," he interrupted. "When we're alone, call me Julian. That doesn't seem appropriate." "Neither does you questioning my motives," he said, but there was the hint of a smile on his lips. "Yet here we are." Before she could respond, Marco appeared in the doorway. "Boss, the DeMarco situation needs your attention." Julian's expression hardened instantly, the brief moment of softness vanishing. "I'll be right there." He turned back to Brielle. "There's a dinner Thursday night. 20 guests. Mrs. Chen has the details, but I want your input on the menu. I'll find you later to discuss it." He was gone before she could answer, leaving her alone in her office with a racing heart and 1,000 questions. The rest of the week flew by. Brielle threw herself into learning everything she could about event coordination. She met with caterers, florists, and staff. She learned the layout of the mansion, memorized the names of Julian's most frequent guests, studied his preferences. And she tried very hard not to think about the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Thursday's dinner was her first real test. 20 powerful businessmen and their wives gathered in the formal dining room. Brielle coordinated the service from the sidelines, ensuring everything ran smoothly. "The wine selection is excellent," one of the guests commented to Julian. "New sommelier." "New event coordinator," Julian replied, his eyes finding Brielle across the room. "She has exceptional taste." The praise shouldn't have warmed her the way it did. Everything was going perfectly until she noticed movement through the garden windows. 3 men in dark clothes moving with purpose toward the side entrance. They didn't look like guests. They looked like trouble. Brielle's heart leaped. She caught Marco's eye and gestured subtly toward the window. He saw the men instantly, his hand moving to his jacket. Within seconds, 5 security personnel materialized from various positions. The dinner guests noticed nothing. Marco left the room with 3 guards. Brielle watched through the window as they intercepted the intruders in the garden. There was a brief confrontation. No guns drawn, but the message was clear. The 3 men were escorted off the property within minutes. When Brielle turned back, Julian was looking directly at her. He gave the slightest nod of approval. After the guests left and the staff had cleaned up, Brielle was gathering her notes when Julian appeared in the dining room. "You have good instinct," he said. "I just saw something that seemed off." Most people would have ignored it, assumed security would handle it. He moved closer. "You took action. That matters." "Who were they?" she asked, then immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry, that's not my business." "No," he agreed. "It's not, but I'll tell you anyway." He poured 2 glasses of wine, handed her one. "Runners for the Corsetti family. They wanted to deliver a message during my dinner party. You prevented that." Brielle took a sip of wine to steady herself. A message about what? Territory disputes, power struggles, the usual. He said it like he was discussing the weather. They won't try again. Marco made sure of that. She should be terrified. She was working for a crime boss, witnessing the edges of a dangerous world, but instead, she found herself fascinated by this man who could discuss violence with such calm, who could shift from ruthless boss to almost gentle in his conversations with her. "You're not afraid," he observed. "Should I be?" "Of the situation?" "Yes, of me?" His eyes held hers. "I hope not." The air between them felt charged. Brielle knew she should leave, should maintain the professional boundary, but she stayed. "My grandmother always said fear is just a lack of understanding," she heard herself say. "Maybe I just need to understand better." "What do you want to understand?" His voice had dropped lower. "Why you hired me, really?" He was quiet for a long moment. "The truth?" "Always. When I saw you standing there, covered in wine, taking my sister's abuse without breaking," he set down his glass. "I saw strength, real strength, not the borrowed kind that comes from money or power. I wanted that strength in my world, near me." Her breath caught. "Mr. Valentino." "Julian." Julian, she corrected, her voice barely a whisper. This is complicated. Everything worth having is complicated. He reached out slowly, giving her time to step back. When she didn't, his fingers brushed a strand of hair from her face. Tell me to stop and I will. She should. Every logical part of her brain screamed at her to step back, to maintain distance, to protect herself. But she didn't say anything. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb stroking her jaw. The touch was gentle, almost reverent. Brielle. The sound of footsteps in the hallway broke the moment. Julian stepped back just as Marco appeared. Boss, sorry to interrupt. We have a situation in the North District. Julian's expression shifted instantly, from the man who'd been about to kiss her to the cold, calculating boss. I'll be right there. He looked at Brielle. Go home, get some rest. Tomorrow we'll discuss next week's event. She nodded, not trusting her voice. As she gathered her things and headed to her car, Brielle's mind raced. She was falling into something dangerous, not just the world of organized crime, but feelings for a man who could never be hers, a man whose touch made her forget every reason why this was a terrible idea. Her phone buzzed as she reached her car. A text from an unknown number. Drive safe. Jay. She looked back at the mansion, saw a figure in an upper window. He was watching to make sure she got to her car safely. Brielle climbed into her beat-up Honda, started the engine, and drove away from the estate. But she couldn't drive away from the feeling of his hand on her face, the promise in his eyes, or the certainty that she was already in too deep to turn back. 2 weeks passed in a blur of events, meetings, and stolen glances. Brielle fell into a rhythm at the estate, arriving early, staying late, learning everything she could. The staff respected her, the vendors responded to her authority, and the events ran flawlessly. And Julian. Julian watched her like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. He found reasons to see her, checking on event details that Mrs. Chen could have handled, asking her opinion on wines when he had a professional sommelier, appearing in her office with coffee exactly how she liked it, though she'd never told him her preference. You're avoiding me, he said one afternoon, standing in her doorway. Brielle looked up from her laptop. I'm working, that's what you pay me for. You've been working non-stop for 14 days. He stepped inside and closed the door. When's the last time you took a break? I took lunch yesterday. At your desk, reviewing contracts. He crossed his arms. That doesn't count. She saved her document and met his gaze. What do you want, Julian? Dinner. We have dinner events all the time. I mean with me, just us. He moved closer to her desk. No business, no staff. Just 2 people getting to know each other. Her heart hammered. That's not a good idea. Why not? Because you're my boss. Because you're... She gestured vaguely. You. Because this world you live in is dangerous, and I have a grandmother who depends on me. Because I can't afford to lose this job, and getting involved with you could... Could what? He leaned on her desk, bringing himself to eye level with her. Make you happy. Give you something beyond just survival. Let you feel alive instead of just existing. The words hit too close to home. Brielle stood abruptly, putting distance between them. You don't know anything about my life. Then tell me, his voice softened. Tell me about your grandmother. Tell me why you worked 3 jobs before I hired you. Tell me why you looked so broken when my sister humiliated you, but you didn't shed a single tear. She turned away, looking out the window at the gardens. My grandmother raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 8. She worked 2 jobs to keep us fed, to keep me in school. She sacrificed everything for me. And now you're doing the same for her. She has a heart condition. The medication is expensive. The doctors are expensive. Everything is expensive. Brielle's voice cracked slightly. Before you hired me, I was choosing between her pills and our rent. So yes, I work non-stop, because the alternative is unthinkable. She felt him move behind her, felt the heat of his presence. You don't have to carry that alone anymore. I'm not your responsibility. No, he agreed. But what if I want you to be? She turned to face him, found him closer than expected. Why? Why me, Julian? You could have anyone. Women who understand this world, who see me as a title, a bank account, a stepping stone to power. His jaw tightened. You see a person. When you look at me, I'm not the boss, not the heir to an empire. I'm just Julian. That's not true, she whispered. I know what you are. And yet, you're still here. His hand came up slowly, giving her time to move away. When she didn't, he cupped her face. You're still looking at me like I'm worth something beyond fear and respect. Julian. One dinner, give me one evening. His thumb traced her cheekbone. If you hate every second, we go back to strictly professional. But if you don't... He left the possibility hanging between them. She knew she should say no, but standing this close to him, feeling the intensity of his focus entirely on her, she couldn't find the word. One dinner, she agreed. Relief and something deeper flashed across his face. Saturday. I'll pick you up at 7. I can meet you. Brielle, when I take a woman to dinner, I pick her up. That's not negotiable, but he smiled when he said it, softening the command. Saturday arrived too quickly. Brielle spent the afternoon in a panic about what to wear before settling on the black dress he'd given her that first night, the only thing in her closet expensive enough for wherever he was taking her. At exactly 7, a knock sounded on her apartment door. She opened it to find Julian in a navy suit holding a single white rose. You look... He paused, his eyes traveling over her in a way that made her skin warm. Breathtaking. It's the dress you gave me. No, he said firmly. It's you. Her grandmother appeared behind her, walker in hand. So this is the boss I've been hearing about. Julian's attention shifted immediately. He handed Brielle the rose and extended his hand to her grandmother. Mrs. Montgomery, it's an honor to meet you. Brielle speaks of you constantly. She better, her grandmother said, shaking his hand while studying him with sharp eyes. You the one paying her all that money? Gamma, Brielle protested. I am, Julian said smoothly. Though honestly, I'm getting the better end of the deal. She's exceeded every expectation. Her grandmother humphed. See that you remember that. My granddaughter isn't someone to trifle with. I wouldn't dream of it. The sincerity in his voice made Brielle's chest tight. In the car, a sleek black Mercedes with a driver, Julian turned to her. Your grandmother is formidable. She's protective, as she should be. He took her hand, and the casual intimacy of it made her pulse race. I like her. The restaurant was exclusive, the kind of place where reservations were made months in advance. But the maitre d' greeted Julian by name and led them to a private corner table with a view of the city lights. Do you come here often? Brielle asked. First time bringing someone who matters. He ordered wine without looking at the menu, and she realized he must have planned this, must have called ahead to make sure everything was perfect. The meal was incredible, course after course of exquisitely prepared food. But what Brielle would remember most was the conversation. Julian asked about her childhood, her dreams, her favorite books. He listened like every word mattered, like she was the only person in the world. And he talked too, about growing up in a world where violence was normal, where trust was currency, where every relationship had strings attached, about taking over from his father at 25 and having to prove himself to men twice his age, about the loneliness that came with power. I've never told anyone that, he said after describing his first year as boss. Never had anyone I wanted to tell. Why me? Because you listen without judgment. Because you see the person underneath. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be human instead of just a position to fear. Brielle's throat tightened. Julian, Silas' glass shattered somewhere in the restaurant. The sound of gunfire erupted. Julian moved instantly, pulling Brielle down and covering her body with his own as chaos exploded around them. Stay down, he commanded, his voice completely calm despite the terror surrounding them. More gunshots, screaming, the sound of tables overturning. Brielle's heart hammered against her ribs as Julian shielded her, his body a wall between her and danger. Boss! Marco's voice cut through the chaos. North exit, now! Julian pulled Brielle to her feet, keeping her behind him as they moved. She caught glimpses of Marco and other security personnel engaging with men in masks. The exit was steps away when one of the attackers broke through, Gun raised toward Julian. Time seemed to slow. Brielle saw the gun, saw Julian's hand moving to his own weapon, knew he wouldn't be fast enough. She didn't think. She pushed Julian sideways with all her strength, just as the gun fired. The bullet hit the wall where his head had been a second before. Julian stumbled, caught his balance, and his weapon was up and firing before the attacker could get another shot off. Then they were through the exit, Marco and two others flanking them as they rushed to the car. Tires squealed as they peeled away from the restaurant. Julian pulled Brielle into his arms, his hands running over her frantically. "Are you hurt? Did anything hit you?" "I'm fine. I'm fine." Her whole body was shaking now, adrenaline crashing through her system. "You could have been killed, ain't he?" said, his voice rough with emotion she'd never heard before. "Brielle, you pushed me. You saved my life. I couldn't let him shoot you." The words came out through chattering teeth. Julian's grip on her tightened. He said something in rapid Italian to Marco, who nodded and gave instructions to the driver. Then Julian was pulling Brielle closer, his face buried in her hair. "You're safe," he murmured. "I've got you. You're safe." But she realized she wasn't afraid of what had just happened. She was afraid of how right it felt to be in his arms, how completely she trusted him, how willing she'd been to put herself between him and a bullet. She was falling in love with Julian Valentino, and there was no going back. The car didn't take them back to Brielle's apartment. It took them to the estate. "You're staying here tonight," Julian said when she started to protest. "My home is the safest place in the city right now, no arguments." She was too shaken to fight. Marco led them through a side entrance, avoiding the main areas. The attackers were Corsetti soldiers, he told Julian. Message was clear, they want a meeting. "They'll get more than a meeting." Julian's voice was ice. "Tomorrow. Tonight, triple the guards. No one in or out without my approval." "Already done, boss." Julian took Brielle's hand and led her upstairs to a wing of the mansion she'd never seen. He opened a door to a bedroom that was larger than her entire apartment, king-sized bed sitting area, ensuite bathroom that looked like a spa. "This is the guest suite," he said. "Everything you need should be in there. If it's not, press 9 on the phone and someone will bring it." Brielle looked around, overwhelmed. "Julian, You need to rest." His hands cupped her face, tilting it up to meet his eyes. "What you did tonight. Brielle, you could have died. So could you. I'm used to that risk. You shouldn't have to be." His thumb stroked her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I should have known they'd try something public. I put you in danger. You didn't pull the trigger. But I brought you into this world." He closed his eyes briefly. "I'm being selfish. I should send you away somewhere safe. But the thought of you not being here, not being near me." He opened his eyes, and the raw emotion in them stole her breath. "I don't think I can let you go." "Then don't," she whispered. His control snapped. He pulled her against him, and his lips found hers in a kiss that was desperate and tender all at once. Brielle melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, kissing him back with all the pent-up longing of the past weeks. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is wrong, that we can't do this." "I can't," she admitted, "because I don't want you to stop." He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. When he lifted her, she wrapped her legs around his waist instinctively. He carried her to the bed and laid her down gently, following her down, caging her beneath him but careful not to crush her. "I need you to understand something," he said, pulling back to look at her. "This isn't just physical for me. This isn't just wanting you, though God knows I do. This is... You've gotten under my skin, Brielle. Into my head. Into my heart. Julian, let me finish." He traced her lips with his thumb. "I know my world is dangerous. I know I'm asking you to risk everything. But I swear to you, I will protect you. I will keep you safe. Nothing and no one will hurt you. That's my promise." Tears pricked her eyes. "What if I can't protect you? What if next time?" "There won't be a next time. I'll make sure of it." His expression hardened. "The Corsettis crossed a line tonight. That ends tomorrow." She didn't ask what he meant. She knew. They lay there together, fully clothed, wrapped in each other's arms. Julian told her about the rival families, about the delicate balance of power, about why the Corsettis saw him as a threat. He spoke openly, trusting her with secrets that could get them both killed. "Why are you telling me all this?" she asked. "Because you're not just someone I work with anymore. You're not just someone I want." He kissed her forehead. "You're someone I need. And I don't share my life with people I don't trust completely." Brielle's chest tightened with emotion. She thought about her grandmother, about the simple life she'd led before Julian. But she couldn't imagine going back to that now. Couldn't imagine not waking up and knowing she'd see him. Couldn't imagine a future without him in it. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured against her hair. "Just sleep. Let me hold you and know you're safe." "Okay." They didn't sleep much. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. He told her about his mother, who died when he was 16. She told him about her dreams of opening an event planning business someday. He confessed he hated olives, but pretended to like them at business dinners. She admitted she sometimes sang to her grandmother when the pain was bad. As dawn broke, Julian's phone buzzed with messages. He read them, his expression growing cold. "I have to handle the Corsetti situation," he said. "Stay here today. Marco will make sure you have everything you need." "Be careful," she said, pulling him down for one more kiss. "Always am." But the way he kissed her back, like he was memorizing the feel of her lips, made her nervous. After he left, Brielle tried to rest but couldn't. She showered, found clothes laid out for her, her exact size somehow, and ventured downstairs. The estate was busy with security personnel moving with purpose. Mrs. Chen found her in the library. "Mr. Valentino asked me to keep you company until he returns." "I'm fine, really." "Nevertheless," the older woman sat down. "He cares about you. I've worked for the Valentino family for 30 years, and I've never seen him like this." "Like what?" "Human." Mrs. Chen smiled. "He's been the boss for so long, had to be so hard, so controlled. But with you, he smiles, he relaxes. You're good for him." "Or I'm a distraction that's going to get him killed." "No," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "You're the reason he'll fight harder to stay alive." Hours passed with no word from Julian. Brielle tried to work, tried to read, tried to keep busy, but her mind kept replaying the attack, kept seeing that gun aimed at Julian's head. It was nearly evening when Marco appeared. "Boss is back. He wants to see you." Brielle practically ran to Julian's office. He was standing by the window, still in the same clothes from that morning, and when he turned, she saw the exhaustion on his face. But he smiled when he saw her. "It's done," he said simply. "The Corsettis won't be a problem anymore." She didn't ask for details. She just went to him, and he pulled her into his arms. "I thought about you all day," he murmured. "Knowing you were here, safe, waiting for me, it made everything else easier. Julian, about us, I love you." The words stopped her cold. He cupped her face, his dark eyes burning into hers. "I know it's too soon. I know I shouldn't say it, but I've spent my whole life controlling my words, my actions, my emotions. With you, I don't want to control anything. I love you, Brielle Montgomery, and I need you to know that." Her heart felt too big for her chest. "I love you too," she whispered. "It terrifies me, but I do." He kissed her with a passion that made her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. "Then marry me." Brielle jerked back. "What? Marry me?" He was completely serious. "I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Marry me, Brielle. Be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, loving you, giving you everything you've ever wanted." "Julian, we've known each other for less than a month." "I don't care." His hands gripped her shoulders. "In my world, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. I'm not wasting time when I know what I want. And I want you, forever." Tears streamed down her face. "This is insane." "Yes. We barely know each other. We'll have a lifetime to learn. What about my grandmother? She'll live here with the best medical care money can buy." He wiped her tears with his thumbs. "I'll give you everything, Brielle, not because you need it, but because you deserve it. Say yes. She should say no, should take time to think, should be rational and careful. But when had anything about them been rational? Yes, she breathed. Yes, I'll marry you. Julian's smile was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. He kissed her again, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. When he set her down, he pulled a small box from his desk drawer. Inside was a ring, a stunning diamond surrounded by smaller stones, elegant and timeless. I bought it 2 weeks ago, he admitted, sliding it onto her finger. I knew then. I just had to wait for you to catch up. Brielle laughed through her tears, looking at the ring, then at the man who'd changed her entire world in a matter of weeks. I love you, she said again, needing him to hear it. I love you, he replied. And I promise you, Brielle, I will spend every day proving that this isn't crazy, that we're exactly what we're supposed to be. As he held her, as she felt the solid strength of him around her, Brielle believed him. Against all logic, against all odds, she believed in them. The wedding was planned for 3 weeks later, not because they needed time, but because Julian wanted to give Brielle the perfect day, and perfection required details. Her grandmother cried when they told her. You're sure about this? She asked Brielle privately. More sure than I've ever been about anything. He's dangerous, baby girl. I know, but he'd never hurt me. And Gamma, he loves me. Really loves me. Not my potential or what I can give him. Just me. Her grandmother had studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Then you have my blessing, but if he ever makes you cry, I'll take my walker to him. The weeks flew by. Julian moved her grandmother into the estate's west wing, where a private suite had been prepared with medical equipment and a full-time nurse. The first time Brielle saw her grandmother in that beautiful room with the best care available, she'd cried in Julian's arms. Thank you, she'd whispered. Thank you for giving her this. She's family now, he'd replied simply. And I take care of my family. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. Brielle stood in a dressing room at the estate, wearing a gown that had been custom-made to her exact specifications. It was elegant, simple, beautiful, everything she'd ever dreamed of. Mrs. Chen helped her with the final touches. You look perfect, the older woman said, tears in her eyes. I'm so nervous. Good nervous or bad nervous? Brielle looked at herself in the mirror. Good, definitely good. The ceremony was held in the estate's garden beneath an arch covered in white roses. Only close family and friends were invited. Julian's world might be large, but the people he truly trusted were few. When Brielle walked down the aisle on her grandmother's arm, Julian's expression made her breath catch. He looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. The ceremony was short, but the vows were everything. Julian spoke his in Italian first, then English, promising to love, protect, and cherish her all the days of his life. Brielle's voice shook as she promised the same, promising to stand by him through everything. When the priest said, "You may kiss your bride," Julian cupped her face gently and kissed her with a tenderness that made everyone watching sigh. "Mrs. Valentino," he murmured against her lips. Finally. The reception was a blur of joy, dancing, laughter, family. Julian's associates gave respectful congratulations, but it was clear they also saw this as significant in other ways. Their boss had married, had chosen a partner. That meant something in their world. But Brielle only cared about the way Julian held her close during their first dance, the way he whispered, "I love you," against her ear every few minutes, like he couldn't help himself. "Happy?" he asked as they swayed to the music. "Beyond happy," she replied honestly. Later, as they said goodbye to guests, Gianna approached. Julian's sister had been notably absent from the planning and had arrived late to the ceremony. "Congratulations," Gianna said stiffly to Brielle. "Thank you." Brielle kept her voice neutral. Gianna looked like she wanted to say more, but Julian's hand tightened on Brielle's waist, and whatever the younger woman saw in her brother's eyes made her think better of it. She nodded and left. "She'll come around," Julian said quietly. "Or she won't. Either way, you're my priority now." That night, in the master suite that was now theirs, Julian undressed Brielle slowly, reverently, worshipping every inch of skin he revealed. Their lovemaking was tender and passionate, a perfect expression of everything they felt, but couldn't quite put into words. Afterward, lying in his arms, Brielle traced the tattoo on his chest, a phoenix rising from flames. "What does this mean?" she asked. "My father had it done on me when I turned 18. A reminder that no matter what happens, we rise from the ashes. We survive. We rebuild." He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. "I never fully understood it until you. You're my rising from the ashes, Brielle. My second chance at something real." She kissed him again, pouring everything she felt into it. 2 months into their marriage, Brielle was reviewing contracts in her office when Marco knocked. "Mrs. Valentino, there's been an incident." Her heart stopped. "Julian? He's fine. But there's been an attempt on his life. He's handling it. But asked me to bring you to the safe room until it's resolved." The safe room turned out to be a fully equipped bunker beneath the estate. Brielle waited there for 2 hours, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. When the door finally opened and Julian walked in, whole and unharmed, she flew into his arms. "I'm okay," he soothed. "I'm okay, amore." "What happened?" "Remnants of the Corsetti family tried one last play." His jaw tightened. "They failed. It's done now, completely done." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He pulled back to look at her, and something in his expression made her nervous. "There's something I need to tell you." Her stomach dropped. "What?" "I'm leaving this life." The words hung between them. "Not immediately, but within the year. I'm making arrangements to turn over operations to Marco. I'm getting us out." Brielle stared at him. "Why?" "Because every time there's danger, every time there's a threat, I think about you, about losing you, about our future children growing up in this world." He cupped her face. "I can't do it anymore, Brielle. I don't want to spend our lives looking over our shoulders. I want us to be free. But this is your family's legacy. You're my legacy now, you and the life we're going to build together." He kissed her forehead. "I've made my choice, if you'll support it." "Of course I'll support it." Tears streamed down her face. "Of course I will." "Good, because there's one more thing." He pulled back slightly. "How do you feel about starting that event planning business? The legitimate kind?" She laughed through her tears. "Really? Really? I'll fund it, you'll run it, and we'll build something together. Something that's ours, something clean." His smile was soft. "What do you say, Mrs. Valentino?" "I say yes. I say yes to all of it." The next few months were transformative. Julian systematically handed over his operations, ensuring smooth transitions and making alliances that would hold. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of danger, but he never wavered. True to his word, he helped Brielle launch her event planning company. They worked side by side, building something from nothing, and she'd never seen him happier than when he was just being Julian. Not the boss, not the heir, just her husband. 6 months after their wedding, they attended their first event as a civilian couple, a charity gala they'd planned together with no criminal element, no dangerous undercurrents, just a beautiful party for a good cause. "How does it feel?" Brielle asked as they danced. "Strange," Julian admitted, "but right. Definitely right." "No regrets." He looked down at her, and the love in his eyes made her breath catch. "Not a single one. You're worth more than any empire, Brielle. You're worth everything." As the music played and Julian held her close, Brielle thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a humiliating moment in his dining room to this, a legitimate business, a loving marriage, a future full of possibilities. She'd gone from serving wine at his parties to being his partner in everything. From invisible to cherished, from alone to deeply loved. And it all started because she'd been brave enough to stay in that office, brave enough to say yes to dinner, brave enough to love a man who'd been taught that love was weakness. Julian had proven love was strength, and together they were unstoppable. 3 years later, Brielle stood in the nursery of their new home, a beautiful estate far from the city, where danger was a distant memory. She rocked their daughter gently, humming softly as the baby drifted to sleep. Sofia Valentino had her father's dark eyes and her mother's smile. She was perfect. Julian appeared in the doorway, watching them with an expression of pure contentment. "She's down, finally." Brielle carefully placed Sofia in her crib and joined her husband. He immediately pulled her into his arms. "Your grandmother called," he said. "Wanted to know if we're still coming for dinner Sunday. We'll be there. She wants to spoil her great-granddaughter." Julian chuckled. Can't blame her. He kissed Brielle's temple. "You know what today is? Our anniversary. 3 years since I made the best decision of my life." He turned her to face him. "I love you more now than I did then. Didn't think that was possible." "I love you too." She reached up to cup his face. "Thank you." "For what?" "For everything. For seeing me when I was invisible. For loving me when I didn't think I deserved it. For giving me this life." "You gave me this life," he corrected. "You saved me, Brielle. In every way a person can be saved." They stood there in the quiet nursery, holding each other, their daughter sleeping peacefully nearby. Outside, the legitimate business they'd built together was thriving. Inside, their family was whole and happy. Brielle thought about that night 3 years ago when she'd been covered in wine, humiliated and small. She'd never imagined that moment would lead to this, to safety, to love, to a family of her own. But Julian had seen her potential when she couldn't. He'd given her a chance, trusted her with his heart, and built a life with her that exceeded her wildest dreams. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. "That I'd do it all again. Every scary moment, every challenge. I'd do it all again to end up right here with you." Julian kissed her deeply, pouring 3 years of love and devotion into it. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Forever," he whispered. "Forever," she agreed. And in that moment, with her husband's arms around her and their daughter sleeping nearby, Brielle Montgomery Valentino knew she'd found exactly where she belonged. This story has reached its conclusion. If it touched your heart in any way, share it with someone who also loves intense romantic stories. New stories are coming soon. Until next time.